It is official. Carlos Correa, officially a Minnesota Twin. Takeaways from the press conference. What it means for now, for the rest of the offseason. It's all coming up on today's episode of Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Minnesota Twins podcast. Today is Wednesday, January 11th, and I'm your gracious host, Nash Walker. Thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every single day on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Again, this is Nash Walker, 4 seasons writing about the Twins at twinsdaily.com, 3 seasons hosting a daily podcast on the Minnesota Twins, 4 off seasons at both. Carlos Correa, officially a Minnesota Twin, signed his contract today at Target Field. Cannot believe this. I mean, can you believe it's official? Carlos Correa, Minnesota Twin for at least the next 6 years. What does it mean for the rest of the offseason now? I think the feeling last year when the Twins signed Correa, the immediate reaction to that, whether it was, people commenting on my videos or my tweets or anybody in Twins territory, it's always what's next? What's next? You got Correa. We know that this team last year won 78 games. Are they going to keep pushing in chips? And last year, the one guy we kept looking at was Frankie Montas in Oakland and thinking, how are they going to get Montas? What does that deal look like? They need to add him to the front of this rotation. I think there's a similar feeling this year, but the difference this year is there's not a clear starting pitcher, frontline starting pitcher who everybody's monitoring. There is, but it's not somebody I think that excites a fan base like Frankie Montas did at that time, because Frankie Montas, the narrative around him was get him out of Oakland, first of all, save him from Oakland, although that park certainly benefits pitchers. Work on his pitch mix. He throws in the upper 90s, disgusting splitter, upside, real upside with 2 years of team control. There was that feeling on Frankie Montas last year. This year, the guy we're monitoring, and I'm monitoring because a big part of that is he's the only guy I think is actually available. I know to be available, and that's Pablo Lopez in Miami. We've mentioned Pablo's name a lot, not only this year, but last year as well. I think Pablo would help this staff, and I think the direction we're heading in this offseason is in that way. I think they're going to continue to try on Pablo Lopez. We know they've been in contact with the Marlins on Lopez, and what Lopez would do is add depth to this rotation. He would raise the floor of the rotation. When you look at this group right now, Kenta Maeda and Bailey Ober, I don't know if you can rely on those two to start every 5th day all season long. I don't think that is a viable plan. Kenta Maeda has not thrown in a year and a half. Bailey Ober didn't really pitch at all last year. He started the season, finished the season, but didn't log very many innings. He didn't log very many innings in 2021. So I think for those two specifically, you have to wonder what's the best plan for Bailey Ober and Kenta Maeda. Is it to have them as your 4 and 5 in the rotation for a majority of the year? Or is it them piggybacking together, meaning you have a 6-man rotation out of spring training, which is going to help everybody. If you have enough good pitchers, I'm always in favor of a 6-man rotation, especially coming out of spring training. If you have enough guys, and the Twins did that out of spring training in 2021 when everybody was healthy. They had Sonny Gray, Joe Ryan, Chris Paddock, Bailey Ober. They had Chris Archer, Dylan Bundy. That was their 6-man rotation. If you can do it, I'm an advocate for it. If you have enough good pitchers early, because in theory, it should help you stay healthier. It should help these guys remain more effective deeper into the season, less innings on their arm as you get into August, September, hopefully October for the Twins. There's less innings on their arms. And for Kenta Maeda and Bailey Ober, I have trouble sitting here thinking and saying Bailey Ober and Kenta Maeda are going to log 150 innings each for the Twins in a 5-man rotation. I don't think it's viable. What is viable is you plan for 100 to 120 innings, hopefully. I mean, in Kenta's case, I think less certainty than for Ober, because Kenta legitimately is coming off Tommy John surgery, has not pitched in a year and a half. But for both of them, I think the best plan is you add somebody like Pablo Lopez, and it all depends on what you're sending back, right? I've publicly said I would not trade Luis Ariz for Pablo Lopez. I would not do that deal straight up today. If you add Lopez, not knowing what's going back, you can have this 6-man group coming out of spring training where you have Sonny Gray, Tyler Mahle, Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez, Bailey Ober, Kenta Maeda. And on every 5th day, Bailey Ober can start or Kenta Maeda can start depending on the matchup, because we know Kenta is dominant against righties. Bailey Ober reverse splits. Depending on the matchup, one of them starts and pitches 3 innings. Then the next guy comes in and pitches 3 innings. And then you go to the bullpen, or you go 3 innings, 4 innings, depending on how they're performing. That's what you do every 5th day. It's going to do a bunch of things. It's going to take the pressure off of Ober and Maeda and their arms going into the season for maybe a month. I mean, I'm not saying you do this for months, but out of spring training, it's going to hopefully help Tyler Mahle and his shoulder. It's going to hopefully help Sonny Gray, who didn't log as many innings as we'd hope last year either. Hopefully help Joe Ryan stay healthy. Well, he was healthy last year. I think you can just rely on Joe Ryan, which is great. I think you can rely on him more than anybody in this rotation for 150 innings. It's going to help everybody. If you have enough good starters, I'm all for it. I'm all for a 6-man rotation with a piggyback. That's absolutely, I'm in for that. They're going to start together, and you would hope that they take up more innings, together, so that either looks like they're piggybacking, or you go straight 6-man, and the straight 6-man would benefit the rest of the rotation. Straight piggybacking, everybody would be on normal rest every 5th day. I'm an advocate for that, and I'm an advocate for Pablo Lopez. What else is coming for the Twins this offseason? What do I want to see them do with the rest of their winter to reasonably go into 2023 saying this team looks like a playoff contender? What does that look like for the rest of the winter after this word from betonline.net? Betonline.net is the fastest and easiest way to get all your sports betting needs, info, stats, news, analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college to basketball, everything. They've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you've already listened to Locked On MLB, you've already listened to Locked On Twins, you've already listened to Locked On MLB Prospects, you can find more podcasts at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. Again, so easy to use. Whether you want to use your phone, desktop, iPad, whatever you're looking for, BetOnline has you covered with a sleek, easy to use design. BetOnline.net, it is where the game starts. Thanks again for making Locked On Twins your first listen every single day. Now listen to Locked On MLB Prospects after this show. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. What does a winning rest of the offseason look like for the Twins? Because this is a team that won 78 games last year with Carlos Correa. So what does this look like for the rest of the winter? To put a team on the field that can reasonably compete for the American League Central, that you can look at and say, if this happens, they can win the Central. I think today, as it stands today, this team is a fringe playoff contender, meaning you're looking at 83 to 85 wins. As I said last night, it's a fringe playoff contender, could swing either way. And that's sort of how I felt about last year's team too. I said it could be a lot of different directions. It can go a lot of different ways. This is slightly different because there is more pitching depth. Correa adds some of that upside. I don't think this team is going to win 70 games. I don't think they're going to lose 92 games next year or this summer. I'm not sure they're going to win 90 though either. I think they're going to end up, as currently constructed, probably in that 80 to 88 win range, somewhere in there. And the difference is huge. 85 can get you in, 84 you're out. So that's where I think they are right now. They're a fringe playoff contender where if things went well, they make the playoffs. If things go well, they're competing for the American League Central. But if things don't go well, they're not, right? They need things to go in their way with this current roster. Health is most of that, but also development and guys taking steps forward, relying on players who have not been reliable, health or performance or otherwise. What needs to happen for the rest of this offseason? What needs to happen for us to go into 2023 for me to sit here and say, this is a legitimate playoff team that should be favored or co-favorites to win the American League Central. The feeling continues to be frontline starter, frontline starter, frontline starter. It was one of my top 5 needs. One of my needs was catcher. I wasn't worried as much about catcher coming into this offseason, to be honest with you. They filled it with probably the second best catcher on the market. I thought Omar Narvaez made a bunch of sense for this team. Christian Vasquez, however you viewed it, is one of the top 5 free agent catchers on the market, and they acquired him. My number 1 need, shortstop. They acquired Carlos Correa. My number 2 need was a big right-handed bat. Correa is that, but that was my number 2 need. My number 3 need was a frontline starter. If you look at this team, they have pitching depth. But this rotation is not going to scare anybody. Nobody's going to look at this Twins rotation and say, oh, I'm fearful of them in a 5-game series. Over a full season, their depth should help. It should be an asset for them over a full season, hoping everybody stays healthy, or at least a chunk of them stay healthy. So they don't need to go, and that was my point all offseason. They don't need to go add depth starters. They don't need to go add a Michael Wacha. They don't need to go add XYZ. They need an impact pitcher. Pablo Lopez is an impact pitcher. Absolutely. He's an impact pitcher. He's like a number 2. And if you added Pablo Lopez to this team, he would be in the Sonny Gray tier. And that's, Sonny Gray or better is what we're looking for this offseason. Only problem is that's via trade. So you're likely subtracting from the major league roster. And if not, you're subtracting from the top of your farm system, because Pablo Lopez is one of the only starters known to be available. We keep thinking of frontline starter, and that's natural to think that way. But I would not rule out them adding wins elsewhere, because that's what they're known to do. They're less likely to trade for a frontline starter than they are to acquire a bat. That's just this front office. And they have traded for starters. They traded for Sonny Gray and Tyler Mahle in the last 12 months, Chris Paddock as well. I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibility, but the way that this market has shaped up, the way that we know this front office operates at times, which is creatively, they often do things we don't see coming. We don't consider. I don't even consider on a daily show. They do things like that all the time. Wins are wins. And I say it all the time. Baseball's a simple equation. Baseball is runs scored minus runs allowed. That's all it is at the end of the day. Do you score more runs than your opponent? It's simple. It's not an easy game. It's a simple game. Runs scored minus runs allowed. And you add those wins in any way you can. And at this point in the offseason, if there's not a lot of avenues to acquire frontline starting pitching, which I don't think there are, there's none on the free agent market. Pablo Lopez is a fringe frontline starter. He's a number 2 starter. He's not like a front line rotation starter. There's not a lot of opportunities to go add that dude in trade or in free agency. That's why I think maybe start thinking about other ways that they're going to do this. I came into the offseason saying there's only a couple spots here, and this was before Correa. There's only a couple spots here that are locked in. Buxton's locked into center. They're unlikely to trade for some stars, Mike Trout. Those things are not going to happen for a bajillion different reasons on Trout specifically. But my point is, it's not going to happen in center field, most likely. It's likely not to happen at shortstop. Now, with Carlos Correa until they're not going to trade for some star level shortstop. And we knew there aren't a lot of those guys out there, because I was talking like, what are they going to do now that they missed out on Correa? How are they going to get a shortstop? There's not a lot out there. Ha-Seong Kim in San Diego was an option, but other than him, I don't think anybody's available. Miguel Rojas traded to the Dodgers today. He was like a low end trade target the Twins could have added if they hadn't signed Correa. So shortstop and center field and catcher, those are really the 3 spots right up the middle. It's a good place to be solid, or to have bodies in Buxton, Correa, Vasquez, and Jeffers. They're solid up the middle in that way. I could see them add legitimately anywhere else. I could see them add a random first baseman, and everybody's wondering why? Why would they add a first baseman? I could see them adding a first baseman, then trading out of first base, trading a Kirilloff or an Arise or somebody from that glut. Adding a third baseman. I don't think they're going to trade Jose Miranda, especially now that Correa's back. But you can add a third baseman, kick Miranda over to first, and trade from first. You could add a left fielder. You could add a right fielder. You can add a right fielder and trade Kepler and start Gallo in left. You can add a left fielder and start Gallo in right. There's a bunch of different things they can do on this roster to add wins. Nobody's locked into any spots. I hate to use the White Sox as an example all the time, but you look at their roster. I'm not saying this is a good or a bad thing, but for the Twins right now, I think it's a good thing. The White Sox extended all of these young players, right? They extended Yohan Moncada, Eloy Jimenez, Tim Anderson, a lot of Luis Robert. They extended these players. Yasmani Grandal is on a 4-year deal as well. Those spots are locked up, essentially, in the White Sox lineup. Those spots are locked because they're on long-term deals. You need those guys to perform. And if not, you need them to perform because you want to trade them. If it's not for you. For the Twins, like, they're not that locked up in many spots. They can get creative, and Derek Falvey used that word at Correa's press conference today. We can get creative, right? That wasn't verbatim, but they can get creative in a lot of different spots. You can add anywhere you want, save for straight up the middle. You could even, like I'm saying, you could reasonably add a center fielder and start him in left field. You could add a center fielder and start him in right field and trade Kepler, which I still think they're going to do. There's a lot of different ways you can go. It doesn't have to be a frontline starter. Do I think that's the most likely? I do. I think Pablo Lopez, however likely you see any trade target, is probably at the top, thinking of what's actually viable here. And we know the Twins have had conversations with the Marlins about Pablo Lopez. We don't know how deep that goes, how far that goes. I would put my money if they add, when they add another player from now until opening day, or multiple players, I would put my money that a starter will be part of that. I would, but I wouldn't put a ton of money on it. I would put a reasonable amount on the field that something comes in, the Twins trade for somebody you didn't even see coming, that you didn't even think of, who plays first base, who plays left field, who plays third base, and you're thinking, how does this player fit on the roster? And then the next day they flip and do something else, because this is what they did out of the lockout. They got creative. They traded Donaldson. Urshela replaced him at third. They traded for Connor Falefa, then they traded him away, and Correa's playing short. They did a lot of different things. They shook this thing up. And this roster today, if you're watching on YouTube, this roster ain't going to be that roster on opening day. It's not going to be this. It's not going to be Gallo, Buxton, Kepler across the outfield, Miranda, Correa, Polanco, Arise, this same rotation, this same bullpen, this same bench. I don't even think it's going to be this going into spring training. I would be really surprised if this is the group they go to spring training with. They're going to trade Kepler. I'm almost certain of that. And when you do that, like I said, it opens up a lot of possibilities. Right now, the Twins at Fangraphs project for the second best wins above replacement at shortstop. They project for a top 2 bullpen in the American League. Only Cleveland projected for more wins above replacement. Some of that's volume related. The Twins bullpen will have more volume than the Astros, say, or the Yankees. But the Twins right now have areas to improve in the outfield, in left and right field. They can improve in both those areas. I think they're 20th in left field in all of baseball for projected wins above replacement, and they're not in a great spot in right field either. You can upgrade those spots. Trey Mancini remains a free agent. You can play him in left and start him at first base. You can platoon at first base with Alex Kirilloff and Trey Mancini, or with Luis Arise and Trey Mancini. They have so many options here. And now that they sign Correa, they have even more options. They have more options with their prospects now. It's not just about shortstop. It's not as simple as they sign Correa, so that makes Royce Lewis and Brooks Lee expendable. It's they sign Correa and they have another fixture in their lineup. Because if you don't have Correa, you almost have to hold more of your lottery tickets and say, I hope he works out. I hope he works out. I hope he works out. We need to hit on one because we need to replace a key cog in our lineup. You got Correa back. It can make you more aggressive elsewhere because you have him in the middle of your lineup at shortstop at a premium position. You can behave differently now that you have him in tow in the lineup on the field. You can behave differently as a group, and I think they will. I think from this point forward, I wouldn't be surprised by anything they do, any addition or subtraction they make. I think some of the rumblings we've heard, Kepler, Arise, those rumblings, maybe even Nick Gordon, that left-handed group, Gallo, Gordon, Kepler, Kirilloff, Larnach, Wallner, Julian, all left-handed. Arise, that's 8 left-handed bats who are going to call for at-bats this year. 8 left-handed bats. they're all gonna be good enough to play, I think, in 2023 or demand at bats at the major leagues. So there's no way the Twins are going into opening day with all 8 of those guys on the roster. That's Kepler, Arise, Gallo, Larnick, Kirilloff, Gordon, Julian, Wallner. 8 of those, I think at least 2 will be gone. I think at least 2 will be gone of those 8. I think one of them is almost assuredly going to be Kepler. I mean, 3 could be gone viably. 3 could be gone. I think one will be Kepler and the other might surprise you. And we'll just have to wait and see exactly who that's going to end up being. You can't look at this roster and say to yourself, this is the group. I can't do it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. Knowing this front office and then just logically, it doesn't make sense to have 8 left-handed bats who are going to demand playing time in 2023. I think Julian's a guy who's going to play for the Twins in 2023. I think Wallner is going to play for the Twins. And I realize not everybody stays healthy. We're talking about 4 or 5 guys among those 8 who have had leg problems, wrist problems. You want to keep as much depth as possible. When they're all left-handed, though, that's not great roster utility. The Twins signed Carlos Correa today officially and DFA'd Kyle Garlick, which I thought was interesting. I think Garlick's going to clear, but if not, they're going to have to add a right-handed bat in free agency or via trade. So that move, DFA and Kyle Garlick, furthered me in thinking, okay, they're going to bring in another bat here. They're going to bring in a right-handed bat, whether it's Andrew McCutchen, Trey Mancini, a trade target. Adam Duvall is a free agent. They're going to bring in a right-handed bat. And I think what was attractive to me about AJ Pollock, who signed with the Seattle Mariners 1 year, $7 million, he held his own against righties and in his career has held his own against righties. He's been a lefty killer his entire career. Clearly, that's a need for the Twins. They need a right-handed corner outfielder who can hit lefties, but also because of a 26-man roster constraint with 14 pitchers, most likely, you need a right-handed bat in the outfield who you can start and feel comfortable starting against right-handed pitching. And I don't think they felt that way about Kyle Garlick anymore. I don't know if they feel that way. I think they like him. I think they like to start him against lefties, but he has such a limited skill set, and he's very good at it. He's very good. One of my professors once told me in journalism school, they always tell you throughout your whole life, be good at a lot of things, right? Be good at a lot of things. Be good at this, learn how to do this, learn how to do that, learn how to do this, but be really good at one thing. And I think that was great advice. Kyle Garlick is really good at one thing, and that's mashing left-handed pitching. And he's cut out a career for himself doing that. And I think, there's a chance he's not in the org. There's a chance that he is not on this team come tomorrow or the next day, whether he's claimed or not, we'll see. But I think what it signals is their comfort level with starting him against right-handed pitching is down. And it's not as high as it once was, maybe. Their confidence in him against righties seems to be lower than it was maybe a year ago or even 6 months ago. And I will say, watching his at-bats and watching him against right-handed pitching, it's like a completely different experience. It's like you're watching a completely different hitter. It's really crazy. Stark difference. So his greatest strength is also his greatest weakness. His greatest strength, destroying left-handed pitching. His greatest weakness, can't really hit righties at all. Maybe because he crushes left-handed pitching. That's why he's in the majors, but doesn't hit righties. I think we're going to see a right-handed bat addition along with Correa. And at that point, if it's somebody who hits lefties well, whether it's, McCutchen, Duvall in his career has hit lefties. McCutchen, I think, was pretty even splits last year. Trey Mancini has hit lefties. They're going to have a lineup. And this was their weakness last year. They could not hit left-handed pitching. They struggled, and they were a top 5 group in weighted runs created plus against right-handed pitching for a lot of the year. They're going to have a group that has excelled in their careers against left-handed pitching. Go down the list. Correa, Buxton, both have destroyed lefties in their career. Kyle Farmer has crushed lefties in his career. Jose Miranda, I think, is going to hit lefties and absolutely destroyed lefties in the minors in 2021. Then you have the bat that they add, whether Garlick's back. Ryan Jeffers has hit lefties extremely well. They're going to have a lineup, hopefully, that is built to hit lefties. And then when you face that righty, guess what? They have 8 left-handed bats, either on the Twins, at AAA, at AA. They got a lot of those. So it creates this nice little platoon set. And I think that's the direction we're heading here in the offseason. So don't be surprised by anything. Thank you so much for making Locked On Twins your first listen every single day. They'll make Locked On MLB Prospects your second listen. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia. He's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you so much. Have a great day and go Twins.